Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You're tuned into Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News, CNBC News, and NBC Sports Radio Station, AM 1050, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, Audible, Amazon Music, TV Live, Rumble, Podchaser, Spreaker, and more. Why so many places? Because I want to maximize my splatter zone for more hope and happiness. So there's no gossip, no scandal, and no K words, no Kanye talk formerly or now. Instead, I want you to focus on your own reality show and how you can be happy 88% of the time. Why not 100? If it's 100% of the time, you're dead. I don't want dead people watching or talking or listening. Instead, I want you to focus on people that I bring on the show to help us with life. And certainly life is a beautiful thing, and bad things happen to good people and bad people. I'm delighted to have him back. He's actually been my boss a few times where I have spoken for his fabulous organization. Let me just give you a little bit about him. Dr. Bob Geffner is the founding president of a nonprofit international resource training, research, and direct services center celebrating its 39th anniversary. It's the Family Violence and Sexual Assault Institute, FVSAI, also known as the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma, IVAT. He's the editor-in-chief of 3 professional peer-reviewed, internationally disseminated journals and has written, edited, co-authored, or co-edited over 100 published professional books, chapters, journal articles, and technical reports. He has a diplomate in clinical neuropsychology from the American Board of Clinical Neuropsychology and is a board certified in couple and family psychology from the American Board of Professional Psychology. Please welcome to my studio, Dr. Robert Geffner.
Jump off.
There we go. Welcome.
Thank you, Marissa. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we met many, many years ago. I don't know if I met you when I was a student or a faculty member, but I definitely remember you when I was on the board of Alliant International University. And I'm delighted to have you back because you know that I don't like talking about negative things. Like whatever is in the news right now, we'll not be talking about because you can get that anywhere. And it's usually, if it bleeds, it leads. And I want to balance out all bad news with good news. However, there is bad news in life, so I don't want to ignore it, but I do not talk about it unless I have solution. And Dr. Geffner's organization is certainly around research and solution. And I've had the honor of keynoting for you. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I didn't get to go to Hawaii, but he has one conference in Hawaii, and I just want to put it out there right now. If you're not doing anything this weekend, start Sunday. I'll be reporting live down there on Tuesday and Wednesday, but the summit, the one in San Diego, which is more accessible than Hawaii, you can all come down and join us there. And it promises to be another fantastic gathering of people who are doing research and are experts in the field of violence, abuse, trauma, and most important, healing from those things. So there's your little commercial and look forward to it. And I know that I also look forward to inviting you all to Hawaii when I go keynote again. Hint, hint, hint.
Well, the theme of this year's summit in San Diego fits your theme exactly, because it's working together to promote well-being.
There you go. So it's a
we
good
set
thing.
it up just for you.
Aww. Okay, I won't call you on that one, but I'm happy to have that link. So I don't have an answering machine, Bob. I have a questioning machine.
Excellent.
And when you call me, it says, who are you and what do you want? So who are you and what do you want?
Well, those are good questions and good to have answers. Who I am is the founding president of IVAT, as you said. I'm a psychologist, as you, and I've been doing this for a very long time, now over 45 years. That's because I started when I was 10 or 15, so you're adding up the years. But the goal for me and what I want has been the same for a long time, is really to reduce and end interpersonal violence, abuse, and trauma. And as you mentioned, there is a lot in the world, too much. In some ways, it's not getting better. So it's really time to pay attention to making a dent on that. So the summit that you mentioned is one of our ways to do that. We do it in lots of ways. IVAT has 10 departments internationally resourced. We're based in San Diego, but we also have branches in Hawaii, as you noted, and in Maryland with Stop the Silence, Stop Child Sexual Abuse. So we're geared to solutions. How do we make our systems of care more trauma informed and now more trauma responsive? People are getting more aware of trauma, and so trauma informed care is more known, but the real idea is to move to trauma responsive. How do we get people who have hurt in one way or another, who have experienced trauma in one way or another, either within their family, within their community, or now societies? There's probably more worldwide trauma than we've had in a very, very long time. So we're tackling those. We're dealing with polarization and how that produces trauma. And unfortunately, we've gotten too much of that in our country and other countries. So how do we reduce that? How do we get people to talk and to heal and to recover? The good news is people can. People can recover from trauma. They can go from survivor or victim to survivor to thriver. And that's what we're all about. So this summit that starts Sunday in La Jolla really has people coming from all over the country and all over the world to talk about and share successful programs, what the science and research tells us in all areas of interpersonal violence across the lifespan. In other words, starting at child abuse and going all the way through to elder abuse. And how do we deal with those? How can we change our families? How can we change our communities? How can we change our societies to be more trauma responsive? So that's what I want.
Beautiful. I pulled up the website, have been showing off all that is available with IVAT. There's even more there than I thought. So please do just use my assistant Google and ask for IVAT, IVAT, and it will pull it up. This is it's happening right now, August 25th, starting this Sunday, the 29th, the International Summit, working together to promote well-being. And I just wanted to highlight a couple things you mentioned about that you deal with abuse, trauma, and healing from that from all ages. So right from the beginning to elder abuse as well. I actually had Casey Kasem's daughter, Carrie Kasem, who talked about the elder abuse with her father. So that is, and of course, unfortunately, child abuse is also in my story, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this. Not because we want to suffer together. I'm one of the 7 out of 10 of us who've had childhood trauma. But why, if we're the majority, why do we think there's something wrong with us? That we'll never catch up, that we'll never, well, ours going to be broken. We're not broken. It's my BS belief system that I believe that trauma is actually a chiseler, on sculptures. So if we can make it through the pain into the power, then we will be fortified by what has happened for us, not to us. But
we've learned a lot about adverse childhood experiences, and you can't change your past. I mean, if it's happened, it happened. Yep. The key is, how do you become resilient? How do you adapt, or not even adapt, but how do you overcome and recover? And luckily, we do have the ability to do that. The vulnerability that you're mentioning that comes from that early trauma can set us on a path that's not positive, but we also have knowledge and research about what can help change that path to recovery and thriving, just like you were talking about. And that's the key.
That is the key. It is the key that unlocks a life, where your glasses are foggy and, misted from crying all the time, to some super glasses that allow you to see what all you're capable of. And I just want to welcome Sherry from Burrell Worldwide Beverly Hills for being in the chat. Those of you who are driving, do not try to chat. But as soon as you land, just go to my YouTube TV channel, which houses all 1,214 podcast shows. But who's counting? Over the last 642 consecutive weeks. I'm so grateful that those who said I wouldn't last more than a year were wrong, as we go on 12 and a half years now. Thank you for all of the support. And Sherry wants life. If you wake up and have another day to get it right. And I would say, Sherry, you're always getting it right. You're never going to get it wrong, and you're never going to get it done. I think right, wrong sometimes limits us. Useful, not useful, happy making, sad making. That's what I try to choose the best feeling thought I can every morning. Now, Bob.
Yes.
You know, when you were a kid, that you were going to be doing what you're doing now? Not
a chance. When I was a kid, I wanted to be shortstop for the Dodgers. And so that sort of got taken out of the picture pretty early. But I would say I didn't know I was doing what I'm doing until probably after becoming an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Texas at Tyler. At that point, I didn't really know much about domestic violence or bullying or any of these things. I had switched over. And that most people, have two careers. My initial career wasn't in this field at all. It was a chemist, and ended up realizing that wasn't for me, and ended up going into psychology. But this field and the institutes and the various private practice clinics I've built over time and the other things, if you had asked me in the late 1970s when I got my doctorate degree, if this is what I'd be doing later, or if this was my vision, no, not even close. But things take on a life of their own sometimes, and you get put in positions where it can change. And that's what happened. I mean, I ended up being volunteered for a board of a rape crisis center as a young assistant professor, and ended up doing a lot of work and building it into a whole crisis center, and helped build a shelter for battered women and children way back in the olden days. And that started this. And as you mentioned, the summit is in its 29th year, and the institute's in its 39th. And the vision has been the same, putting everything together, working together to end violence and abuse. Connection is a key to what you're talking about. To thrive, to recover means that making connections with others, finding support, finding your confidence. And over time, our institute has built into all these areas. And so I wouldn't have predicted where I am now that many years way back then.
Wow. Wow. That's a great story. We're going to be right back. Take a quick break for news and traffic. Don't go away. This is Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show with my very special guest, Dr. Bob Geffner. Don't go away. We'll be back in peace in and peace out.
Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome back. You're tuned into Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA NBC News, home to the Asian Oprah, AM 1050, FM 106.5, streaming everywhere. Number one talk in the IE. Thank you very much. And we have today's guest is Dr. Bob Geffner. He is the founder of IVAT, Institute for Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. And I have him here because he has a summit coming up in San Diego. I have had the honor of being a keynote several years. You have some amazing keynotes this year. I want you to talk just a little bit about them, and I'm going to bring them up on the screen. There's one in particular that I chose to cover for my own broadcasting purposes. And if you want to start with him, let's see if I can find him. He is on the last day, and he is a student, right? From, there he is, David Hogg. Tell me about him.
Well, some of you may remember David Hogg was a student at Parkland in Florida. We've had students involved with our summit for quite a while now. People who, as students, became activists because of the tragedy that happened there. And these were the survivors of Parkland. And instead of really just getting so traumatized that they couldn't do anything, they took that on themselves to really form active groups. David has been really active in looking at gun violence and gun safety and the importance of what's happening in schools. And sadly, this hasn't gone away. So he's one of our closing speakers on Wednesday, late morning, to really focus on, how do we get past some of this trauma and how do we change? How do we change systems of care? How do we not only become more aware, but actually do something about it? And that's, I think, a real key. And he was a very young man when this happened, and it's taken his life in a different direction, I'm sure, too. So he's going to be one of our closing speakers, along with Dr. Jennifer Gomez, who has also been looking at how do you overcome trauma and looking at it from dealing with cultural and racial issues. So I'm very happy about the people we've been able to put together. We seem to always get phenomenal opening and closing speakers who have their own stories. You have Daryl's picture in front of you, who's the current president of the American Professional Society on the Abuse of Children, who came from a very horrific past and has also turned that into a life of helping others and dealing with trauma. So that's a theme you'll see over and over in the work we do, is people who have lived experiences and how they've transformed their trauma and how that can help others. I think in both summits, we always have people with that background, along with people who are doing the treatment, the people who are doing the research from, our country and other countries. Nobody is immune from this. Virtually everybody can, either themselves or somebody in their family or some close friend, has experienced trauma of some sort. And to know that people can recover, can become whole again, not forgetting the trauma, but using it to form new strengths, as you were talking about earlier,
Yes.
and resilience. And
Yes.
luckily we know more.
Absolutely. In fact, I've gone out on a limb now to actually suggest that instead of being ashamed or hiding or being depressed about what's happened to you, those of us who've had it are in the best possible position to help others who have gone through that, because not everybody, like no one can truly understand what someone else has gone through. Never, because different people. However, if you've had a kind of trauma that someone else has had, you are in a position to be a symbol of hope. You are in a position to know, how did you get to where you are? I tell everyone who've had some kind of trauma, you can write and share your story as a healing story, which is kind of what I did with this girl. And it's not a book as a psychologist telling you how to be happy. 8 Ways to Happiness is a book about me and how I used exercises to get through that, which is why you had me on as a keynote, because it is really, it's not, I want to bring abuse trauma from that space of terminally unique negative to an opportunity for you to be an expert. I know it sounds horrible to be an expert, but in the sense of you're in a position with the experience to help others heal. So if you are feeling bad, if you've never talked about, I think the worst thing, I think in a 12-step program, it's called You're Only as Sick as Your Secrets. And I know there was a plenary at one point when I was keynoting on, the power in being able to release the secrets and of the abuse. And my honorable moniker, Oprah, is the one I credit with bringing that level of healing by sharing her own abuse, by bringing on guests instead of Jerry Springer highlighting all the negative things about people, but highlighting their pain, to normalize their pain, to normalize trauma in the sense that, look at the Olympics, Simone Biles. The one I actually loved hearing from was Caleb Kessler, the swimmer, who said, he got a gold medal, for goodness sakes, and then was traumatized by his own inner critic, which usually is developed through, a past that wasn't so healthy, right?
Yeah, the negative effects of trauma really survive and thrive in darkness, in the secrets. It produces that shame and guilt, and that's what can override and really overcome the ability to get out. Bringing it out in the open helps bring the light back. And even though just that alone may not be the answer, it's the beginning, because you're starting to shove away that shame and guilt as if somehow it was your fault. Because a lot of the trauma, we internalize that. whether it's abuse and somebody has told us it's our fault, domestic violence, sexual assault, and we internalize that. So opening up and finding out, A, you're not alone, and B, others have experienced that and can share. And that's why connections has been a key to what we do, and to resilience. That's the support that people need to start on the path to wellness and to overcoming those negative factors. So we try to emphasize that and have people talk about their stories, but not just from the negative standpoint like you're talking about, but how did I get to where I am today? And what helped me, because maybe that can help somebody else.
Yes. Yeah. There seems to be two extremes, and you tell me if this BS, my belief system, is accurate or not from your extensive experience in the field. So there's two extremes in dealing with abuse and trauma and violence. Either you bury it, it's the past, can't change it, not going to talk about it, don't want to deal with it. So you push it down, and like garbage, when you push it down, it turns into liquid, into gas. And then sometime around midlife opportunity, it starts coming out, and everybody else smells your gas, but you don't. So that's one extreme. The other one is...
Not sure I would use that exact analogy, but it does sort of describe the idea that it's not going to go away. It's going to still affect you.
Yeah. What you do not deal with will come and deal with you, is how I also like to say it. The other extreme is you just live in that trauma, violence, abuse. You can't escape it. You wake up, but that's all you think about. You go to bed, can't sleep because you're thinking about it. No offense to my peers as clinical psychologists. I'm actually an organizational psychologist. Want to make that clear. But some play that tape every time they go and spend money or not spend money. But just the point is, you can't get out of it because you keep bringing it up over and over and over again. You're triggered by this, you're triggered by that, you're triggered by this. And that extreme also, in my humble opinion, not so humble opinion, is not useful as well. But the balance, which is why I'm all about balance, is, that middle ground of, okay, let's acknowledge it, but let's not overplay it, right? And I say this to everyone who's had abuse, please look in my eyes. Nothing you did as a child was your fault. Nothing. So if there's any voice that says otherwise, say, thank you very much. That's not true. However, your responsibility now, if you're not 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, and you're in life, it is your responsibility to deal with it. And how do you deal with it is deal with it fully and then make that turn.
Well, and the people sometimes who are in that, what I call negative cycle that you were referring to, are using bad techniques. They're using ways to try to deal with it that are counterproductive and self-destructive. So the pain is so strong, like you're saying, that they're going through it day in, day out, but they then sometimes will turn to drugs or alcohol or other types of non-helpful techniques to mask the pain, to try to block it out. And that's as non-useful as the ones who are pushing it down. So your point of balance is the key. Neither of those are going to work, especially long-term. The idea is there are techniques that work, and getting it out in the light and opening up and talking to people, and therapists are around who are trained in dealing with these different types of trauma. And there are support groups because that isolation is either way keeps people buried. And keeps people from reaching their potential. And we have huge amounts of potential, and that's the idea. is to really help people figure out what works best for them, because there's no pat answer. I mean, I wish I had the easy answer, but these are complex problems, and humans are complex beings. So the idea is really to find what works best with each individual to become trauma responsive, to understand that you've experienced a trauma, but there are ways to now go past it. Again, you don't forget it, you don't ignore it, you use it, you learn to overcome the vulnerability. And it was my fault mentality that you mentioned earlier. And that's a good part of what our work is about, whether it's research or direct services. I mean, we have a clinical component that actually treats adults, children, families, and we train professionals. You know, we have doctorate students and others at our institute. And within the next year, we're going to probably open up a branch of that in Los Angeles to really spread some of the ability to help others directly. But the big picture is also what we're looking at. So we move from what's called micro to macro. We deal with individual people, but we also deal with societies, communities, because we need to change our systems of care. We need to make them trauma responsive. And that's what we try to do as well. So hopefully people will still have the opportunity to register. We also have discounts for like military or students. We have law enforcement can get a 25% discount. City, county employees also, because we're trying to help. We're trying to really spread the word and provide techniques so that no matter where you're at, as a parent, as a clinician, as a researcher, that there's things at the summit for you over the 3.5 days. I mean, as you pointed at the beginning, your first chart there's 12 different tracks. So there's things going on each day, no matter what the particular issue or trauma or idea is. And we also have self-care, which I know you're big on. Either during the sessions or between sessions, we actually have self-care exercises and people to do from meditation to yoga, because these are pretty intense topics, as you mentioned. So we need to take care of ourselves to help others. And that's part of the well-being.
Yes. And as you can see, I'm scrolling through the agenda just in the first look at all the self-care in here. And you can get, this is kind of like a buffet. You can try things that you've always wanted to try, whether it's you as an individual who is going through and wanting some healing from trauma, or someone who's in the field who needs self-care as well. Sometimes we get a little sidetracked because we're caring so much about other people that we forget about ourselves. Certainly one of those things that happens when you grow up thinking you're responsible for everybody. But please do go register. I just pulled that up. It's easy. Ask my assistant Google, IVAT, IVAT. We're going to have to take a quick break for news and weather. We'll be right back with a word from our sponsor. And don't go away. We'll be back in 2 and 2, as Chuck Woolery used to say, but I say peace in and peace out.
Welcome to Balanced Tai Chi Gong. My name is Dr. Marissa Pei. For the next 28 minutes, we will be slow dancing with the universe in a moving meditation that promotes inner peace, one breath at a time. Just follow the sound of my voice and move with me as I guide you through this ancient wisdom through New Thought practice. As a corporate psychologist, I created this practice in response to my life and those of my clients. We were professional, high achievement-oriented, multitasking control freaks and exhausted. No matter how many successes, it was never enough. That, coupled with a painful life experience, led me on a quest to find another way to live and back to my Chinese roots. If you practice regularly, I can promise you that it will impact all health vortexes, body, mind, spirit, soul. You will be in a place of balance and inner peace the way we were created. 谢谢.
Be my partner, dance with me, just hold on.
Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And we're back. You're tuned into Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News Radio, home to the Asian Oprah, the station that leaves no listener behind. Number one talk in the IE. Thanks to you. And today we have a very special guest on Straight Talk, the series. His name is Dr. Bob Geffner. He is the founder, director, and chief bottle washer of the Institute for Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. Speaking of which, I saw that picture of you and Dr. Sandy. Please give her my love. It's been a while, and look forward to getting a big hug when I go down this time next week. And just in case you were looking for a vacation, it's also a great way to learn and vacate at the same time. It's at the beautiful Hyatt. I'm grateful that I get to stay and visit there. That's a nice location. So for those of you looking for, a write-off on a vacation that you're going to do some learning as well, I believe there are also classes that are part of the CE. Talk about those for a bit. Because who can actually get something from this? Well,
mental health professionals, for one, if they attend the entire summit, can get basically their continuing education credits for the year, up to 20 hours of CE credits, and specializations for those who want to get a specialization in trauma or in dealing with child custody or dealing with domestic violence offender treatment. We have a variety of specializations and approvals. Nursing, attorneys, all those have availability of getting continuing education or continuing legal education. We provide those as an option. People can sign up and pay for those and literally get their training on ethics, on whatever's required. So we try to help for those as well. So glad to do a variety of things. If you go to the IVATcenters.org website, you'll see webinars that people can do on their own time. And some of the presentations at the summit will be recorded and turned into webinars, again, to make it more accessible to people who aren't able to come. So we try to do a lot of different things. And as you mentioned, Sandy Capuano Morrison is the CEO for IVAT, and she will be there and doing some training as well. Most of our staff have multiple skills and can do different things. The students that we have at the Institute, because we are a training institute, and so they'll be involved, and other students will be coming because we have a poster session that actually allows people to do brief presentations. So we've been pretty innovative in trying to make sure there are different opportunities for people at different levels, from advanced clinicians to beginners, new people coming into the fields. And then we keep adding, as people give us suggestions. What's interesting in the summits we do is we have planning committees that are made up of people, all over, from survivors to clinicians to attorneys, who meet once a month via Zoom, and they help a year in advance, plan these summits, what the topics are, what do people want to hear, what do they want to learn. And that's how we, end up with the summit that you are showing, is because of the suggestions. And also all the speakers who come to share in their knowledge and skills and information. That's part of, again, connections.
Yeah, I have to thank the committee. I'm one of the few keynotes they said that were asked back by popular demand, because I guess the feedback from the first one was so good. So I have to thank that committee if it's the same one or some of the
rotates.
same ones.
Yeah, some of the people have been on the committee for like 20 years. And they keep threatening to resign or retire, but they're still there. And some just started. So it continues to get new blood, new ideas, but also people who have been through it. It's a different type of summit. The atmosphere is balanced, as to use your word. It's positive. There's people there who have different ideas, don't always agree, but they can agree to disagree. But they can share their knowledge and experiences. I think one of the interesting things that was requested this year is what we call the roundtable plenary, where 5 or 6 people with different areas of expertise take on particular questions, and then we'll also get some questions from the audience. But we tend to deal with some of the hot topics and controversial issues to try to get people on the same page, or at least, be able to talk to each other. And this year, it's the topic is increasing polarization, the global and national impact on violence and trauma. Because and we have people on different perspectives, and there's a lot of polarization, whether we're talking about in our own communities, in families, in our country, and in other countries now. And that's increasing trauma. So we have some really good people with completely different perspectives who will, share their insights and see, how do we end up talking to each other to respect the issues, to respect the viewpoints, and learn from each other.
That is brilliant. You got a finger on someone gave you a finger on that thought. Not that finger, but this finger. Thank you so much. Those of you who are listening and are stationary, you can go to my YouTube TV channel, free subscribe, and be able to comment and ask Bob any questions while you are there. I'm so glad to hear that, and I hope that it is there when I'm there on Tuesday and Wednesday. The roundtable, we'll find out. But
no, it's unfortunately it's Monday, but there are parallel plenaries on Tuesday that you'll be able to see in late morning, where it's the same idea, but it's broken into maybe 5 or 6 particular topics. Each one run a little bit like that, where there's a panel and interaction with the audience and each other on hot topics.
Because that is a skill that we used to be good at as Americans, and we are terrible at now, which is agreeing to disagree, as you were pointing out earlier, as a concept. It's like premarital sex. Like, what is that? Agree to disagree. I just don't understand why, how we got there. But the increasing polarization is not good for, or helpful or useful, taken not right or wrong, but is not useful for us as a country. Again, I'll point to the Olympics as a wonderful way of showing the resilience and the ability to put those aside in those countries that were there side by side, or maybe on 2 different boats in the opening ceremony. But, how do we get back to that place where we can say, I'm not my political party, so I can still be civil and kind, putting the kind back into humankind for us. How do we do that? So, yeah, another good reason to go to the IVAT Summit in San Diego, starting this Sunday, running through Tuesday. Just go and register
It's
online.
actually through Wednesday.
I'm sorry, through Wednesday. That was a
Yes.
oops. Yeah.
You'll be able
I try to take one day at a time, but sometimes an entire week slaps me in the head, which is seemingly what's been going on. Speaking of which, I did not want to forget, if we could just have a very deep breath right now, in through the nose, out through the mouth, sending peace, comfort to the family of one of my beloved little guys, Colt Reed, who I just found out this morning had a horrific accident on his little motorbike with a car. He is, in the hospital now, and his dad, friend of mine, says I'm part of the family, and I'm just like, I can't believe it. And at the same time, we just know, and we're praying for the best case scenario. My daughter was in a similar situation years back. She was in a horrific, her Jeep rolled over. The salvage guy said like 20 times,
Wow.
Fractured neck, and she's 100% fine. So we're just knowing that for Colt. I love him so much. He's my bump partner on the red carpet. So I'm just going to put that out there, and I didn't want to forget. So, question for you on government and abuse, violence, and trauma. I don't usually ask this question, but it popped in my head. As far as policy, what is working, what is not working? Certainly, it's all tied up. I was shocked when I was reading the David Hogg story and how he has had death threats, and that the crazy woman who called him a liar and said it was all a conspiracy theory. Congress. I hope she's not a Congress. Anyway, she's high up in the leadership. I'm not going to name her name, but we all know that story. If you haven't, look it up. It's crazy. But I don't talk politics on the show. But that whole, I hope that there's positive things that our government is doing with respect to this versus that.
Well, right now, and we pretty well try to stay out of politics too, but if you look, government, especially Congress, is pretty well at a standstill, and that's not helpful. I mean, things that people should generally agree on, like how do we stop child abuse? How can we remove violence in the schools? Some of these seem like no-brainers, like you were talking about with David, and yet it's turned into a political argument, sure, as opposed to just, wait a minute, let's get some logic back into here. Let's think about the future. I mean, when we were growing up, the idea of violence in the schools meant somebody beat up somebody. Right. And we didn't have people bringing guns to school and shooting mass amounts of people. And not only adults doing this, but kids themselves doing this. I mean, in my day, back in the 1800s, our drills were for nuclear war. We would have these drills in school to get under your desks. And when you think about it, that's just sort of ridiculous, because a desk is going to protect us from a nuclear bomb. But that's the drills we had. Now they have to drill on what happens if there's a shooter. I mean, imagine just the trauma of having that be a topic of major focus in schools with elementary school kids who are just trying to grow up, who are just trying to have some fun, and to have that. And that's just a sad situation to be in now. And that's something we really need to change.
Yeah, and it is so tied up with politics because of the whole gun issue.
Yep.
Common sense is uncommon, is what I say. I just did a show on that yesterday with on Doctors in the House with my co-host Dr. Tiffany Tate, and it really is one. Like I got to do. I was on book tour in Australia earlier this year, and sold out. Thank you. But it was like they have a very strong stance on no guns, and it has been reflected by the stark decrease in violence. But for some reason, people go, oh, well, that's just an anomaly, or it's nothing to do with the guns being. I'm like, come on. But that is one of the things in our country that we put our freedom in front of the children being shot in schools. And I hope if you are one of those people, I'm not trying to say you cannot have your gun, but the semi-automatics, like, is there a way we can balance and get to the point where we can have, a bipartisan solution? I love that word, bipartisan. If we could just be bipartisan.
Yeah. Well, and we did some more stuff in the last few years with gun safety and some of those things. I like your balance approach, because that's going to likely be the best idea no matter what we're talking about. People tend to go to one extreme to the other. There are people who can have guns, assault rifles, and weapons of war. Have a harder time figuring out why somebody needs that. But you can have gun safety, and you can have red flag laws, and you can do other things that are balanced, background checks, without saying all of a sudden, well, we're going to take away your guns. And that's almost in every topic area. When we're talking about child abuse, no, we're not taking away parents' rights, but we also can't have kids being abused. And if we could get more to that center, to that balanced position in almost all these topics, then there are things we can learn. And one of the things I like about our summits is they're international, which means we have people from other countries coming and sharing how they do things, and they learn from how we do things. If you have the approach that only what we do is the right way, and I know what's right, then you're going to be in trouble, because these are complex issues.
Absolutely.
So that's what we try to do, is that balance.
Well, good. That's fabulous. Because it is, unfortunately, as a cultural difference. If I remember, I know you've studied Hofstede and how we rate as countries on different indices. And one of the ones is that whole independence or systemic thinking versus Newtonian thinking. My way or the highway is Newtonian, focus on one problem, one solution. Child abuse happens because one reason. There's no one reason. It's a multitude of reasons that feed into that play. And so in order for a solution, you have to address all of those. But if you are so knocked into Newtonian, and we do grow up that way, what's the right answer? There's no, three right answers. All of the above is rare, right? So we have to individually, I think people ask me all the time, what can we do? I don't have a lot of money to donate, or I don't have the time to volunteer. I say, just start with, can you adopt a way of thinking and communicating that it's not right or wrong, that there's not only one answer, that everything doesn't have to have a clear answer, and you can consider multiple possibilities. That is a huge, if we all did that, we huge step towards world peace. Because then if you disagree with me, you're not an idiot. You just have another possible merging into the problem point of view with the solution.
Well, and people keep wanting simple answers to complex problems. They want a one-size-fits-all approach. And we know from years of research, neither of these are going to work. And there may be an approach that'll work for you that won't work for me. So you have to have not only ways to dealing with multiple reasons, but multiple answers that fit the individual. And I think that's one of the things I've talked about for decades, is we need to tailor programs to what's going on with the individual and get away from a simple solution for a complex problem. I mean, that's what people wanted, like just say no to solve whatever the problem was, whether it was drugs or unwed.
Obesity.
Yeah, you name it. It was just do that. And those don't work. And it's not going to work because we are complex and these are complex problems. So that's one of the things that you'll see emphasized is what are alternative approaches depending on what the particular problem an individual is dealing with and who the individual is. And to have those alternatives available. I think that's one of the things when you're talking about government is we need government to get away from that idea of either a simple solution, black and white, or
Literally.
Yeah, definitely. Or that it's, one size fits all and start looking at having alternative solutions. Like you were talking about meditation and some of the things that works well with some people. And for others, it won't work at all.
Yes, absolutely. And before you go on, we're out of time and I don't want to have to cut you off,
No
but
problem.
I'm going to. But before, because I really did want to give you something I don't give all my guests, but for all the work that you do and more, I'm awarding you with Dr. Marissa's Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award.
Very much appreciated.
Beautiful. I will see you on Tuesday, but those of you who are at all interested in this and want to be part of the solution, please go register. IVAT, Institute of Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. The San Diego Summit starts on Sunday, runs through Wednesday. I will be there. It's all about balance. If you could join me, Bob, this is what I do to end every show. Peace in, peace out. World peace through inner peace. Now go and have the best day ever. I'll see you tomorrow.
Take back your life with Dr.